So we are going to transition to a patient's perspective. We've heard quite a bit from the medical field. We've heard quite a bit from doctors. And I think it's time to kind of transition a little bit to hear about how patients, perspectives. And we have Ben Wilson, who is going to just give a brief talk about what his perspective is as a vasculitis patient. Ben Wilson is a sports broadcaster originally from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and who is currently based in Las Vegas. He does play-by-play for several regional networks, including Fox Sports Midwest and SEC Network. Ben was diagnosed with EGPA in 2014, just before beginning his senior year at the University of Missouri. He started working with the Vasculitis Foundation in 2017 as a youth ambassador and currently helps with development of the Vasculitis Foundation's young adult community. So, Ben, delighted to have you here.
Yeah, thank you. What an amazing intro, Sarah. Great to see you, and yeah, what an honor. I get to follow Doctors Mockett and Dua, who are both outstanding. And yeah, I'm certainly the least qualified medical person here today. But from the patient perspective, though, I did just want to talk for a couple minutes before we bring on Dr. Kermani to talk about steroids in general. And I think as far as prednisone as a whole, it's, I think, at the same time, the easiest thing to talk about in a general vasculitis sense, and also the hardest thing to talk about at the same time, because it's something that impacts us all, but it also impacts us all in different ways. And so it's something that is usually, as Dr. Dewey, you saw all those different medications. I think all of us have been on some sort of combination of those throughout our respective journeys. I've been diagnosed, it's been a little over 6 years now since I was diagnosed back in 2014. But along with that, you're going to be on prednisone and steroids at some point. So the perspective I wanted to give, just talking to all of you here for a couple minutes, is about that and just the impact it has. Because there's really, we think about these treatment plans for all the different drugs and the timelines and the amount you're supposed to be on. And the thing with prednisone is it doesn't have any rules. It kind of violates all of those potentially preconceived notions of how long you'll need to be on it, how much you'll be on it, and at what times you'll be taking specific doses. Just for context, for me, I mean, I was on prednisone for 5 years, from 2013 straight through 2017. I was on 80 milligrams at one point. I was on 2.5 milligrams at one point. I was on 10, 20, 30. I mean, you could pick any number. I was probably on that amount of prednisone at one time or another. If you would have seen me back then, you would not recognize my face, because I, like many of us, gained quite a bit of weight in the moon face, as we like to call it. But it's something that I think from a mental perspective, and Dr. Mockett certainly touched on this a little bit. As you go through it, I think the most important thing is, as far as steroids are concerned, is to remember that, as we look at all these different medications, kind of this big equation, trying to combine to find the best outcome and best result for how you're feeling as the patient. And you'll likely have your team of doctors who are weighing all those different factors and trying to figure out what the best solution is. But I think the thing to remember with prednisone is that ultimately you are the quarterback of your entire team. And prednisone, I think, while it is obviously a drug that has a lot of harm, obviously also does a lot of good. And while it can fall at times into that necessary evil category, it can also teach you a lot about understanding and learning your own body, how you react at different points where you're on as far as your treatments. I mean, you can feel a mileage of difference from even being on 10 milligrams of prednisone versus 8 milligrams of prednisone. It's amazing how big a difference you can feel with just a small change in your dosage. So the thing for me, in my own experience, I just remember how, thinking about it from my parents, my team of doctors, we were also concerned about those long-term impacts. And Dr. Karani will get into this a little bit more, because there are obviously those long-term side effects that can be really damaging. And it's why we ultimately want to get off prednisone, and it's a huge milestone if we can. But I remember at the same time having such an urgency, such a desire to completely get off prednisone, that you can sometimes lose sight a little bit of the fact that it is a really long process. It's not something that you can just be on for a few days or a couple of weeks and just all of a sudden, boom, you're off and you're good to go. You're back to being 100% again. it's something that it does take time, and it takes the ability of you as a patient to listen to your body and then relay that to your doctor. Say, hey, this is how I'm feeling at this particular rate of prednisone. I definitely had, on more than one occasion, I tried to, on my own, speed up that process of getting off prednisone, because I kind of had this thought ingrained in my head of, all right, this is an evil drug. We can't be on it. We're going to have all sorts of terrible things happen to us. And what instead happened was I went off probably too early and would end up having flares and relapses, and a lot of the even worse symptoms of my own vasculitis, having an EGPA diagnosis, come back. So as I've gone through it, and like I said, having been on just about every type of amount of prednisone over a 5-6 year period, I can tell you that it is one of those things that really forces you to take as detailed and introspective of an approach as you possibly can with your own body and how you're feeling. Because no matter what sort of treatment you're on, whether, for me, with all the ones that Dr. Dua mentioned, I started off on Cytoxan, I've been on Imuran, Cellcept, I'm on mepolizumab now. But no matter what, you're going to be on some level of steroids, and it's going to affect you on a day-to-day basis with how you feel, from fatigue to the moon face, of course, and general other factors as well. So my biggest advice, just from going through this and having my own perspective, is make sure, like I said, to be that quarterback of your whole medical team, and kind of learn to really communicate your feelings based on that direct impact prednisone is having on you. And at the same time, I used to think having to bump up prednisone, having to go back on a burst, going back up to say 40 milligrams a day to get my symptoms under control. I thought that was like an admittance of failure, and that we were going back to square one, and that we were kind of going in reverse, trying to drive toward that light at the end of the tunnel. Just understand that from a mental perspective, that's not really the case. As vasculitis as a whole, it's a disease and a journey as a patient that has all sorts of bumps in the road, and it's never really going to be a straight line. So don't get discouraged just because you have to maybe go back up on your prednisone dose, or just because you're starting to see a lot of other symptoms. Maybe you look in the mirror, you don't really recognize yourself one day. Just know that we've all been there as patients, and that's an extremely common thing. And so while you don't want to become in a situation where you're relying on prednisone every day and just popping 20 milligram pills, having them in your back pocket. I may or may not have done that at one point as a college student, just trying to have fun. Well, obviously you don't want to go that far to the extreme. Also understand that if there's times where you're not feeling well and you can feel symptoms starting to come back, make sure not to ignore that feeling in your own body, even as you understand that ultimately our goal is to get off prednisone, but know that it can be that necessary factor that you require. So that's just a little bit of my own perspective. I know Dr. Kermani has a much more in-depth medical perspective on that, and can tell you more of the specifics. I just know that from a patient, and from every other patient I've gotten to meet through the VF, and there have been quite a few of them since I've been really fortunate to get to work with this organization here for the past few years. I know it's something that's common to all of us, and no one treatment is the same. So I hope you can just sort of keep some of those things in mind as you start your own journey, and understand that that light is going to be there at the end of the tunnel, no matter what sort of symptoms you're feeling, or how much prednisone you have to be on. So I'll kick it back to you, Sarah. Thanks for all you've done with hosting this today.
Absolutely. Yeah, Ben, thank you. Thank you. I mean, I agree 100% with everything that you said there. I mean, everything you said, I've experienced. And it's funny, I once heard prednisone described as the duct tape of the vasculitis world. It works, but it ain't pretty kind of thing. And it works. It ain't pretty, but it works kind of thing. And, it is part of the arsenal that we have. So absolutely. Thank you, Ben. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great seeing you. Take care.
Thanks. You.